Looks here like we've struck gold. Ah, Bonanza. We have a treasure trove of little-known facts about the most groundbreaking Western of the age. Bonanza had everything, from intense action to unforgettable music. And it still managed to break the mold. And we uncovered some secrets about the Cartwrights and Company, and we're here to share the wealth with you all. I'm your host, Nostalgic Nick, here to mine out some trivia that made Bonanza so exceptional. If you enjoy our trip back to Ponderosa Ranch, please be sure to give it a thumbs up for us. I know Hoss would. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on priceless memories. But without further ado, let's get digging. Revolutionary premise. Hop back to the 1950s, and if young men wanted a good role model, it probably wasn't coming from the small screen. That's why Bonanza producer David Dortort was dead set on making the Cartwright Men. First, he made sure he got hour-long episodes instead of the standard 30 minutes. That better gave time to each Cartwright to show he's capable and strong.
If I'd done what you think, do you believe I'd be a free man today?
Oh, I've heard all about you, Cartwrights.
And it worked. Dortort got thousands of letters from teenage boys wishing that Benjamin Cartwright was their own father. All this to make a Western retelling of King Arthur. Of course, that made Ben Cartwright King Arthur, and his sons were the Knights of the Round Table. That wasn't the only way Bonanza broke ground, besides, the mining. It also took a whole new approach to the Western genre. This was the first time a Western didn't just revolve around shootouts with the local baddies. Instead, Bonanza used the genre as a general backdrop to talk about more important social issues. The first of its kind to do that. They had to make some character adjustments along the way. The Cartwrights started off fairly hostile towards their neighbors, but the writers realized that this family would be all about helping their community, so they should probably be nicer. All things equal. The Bonanza team really wanted their male leads to feel like equals. So the show regularly swapped the billing order for each cast member, so everyone got the same amount of exposure. Then you'll see they did the exact same thing for the opening credits. Each week featured a different name showing up first, so everyone got their chance to shine. Sometimes this lack of favoritism was so stagnant that during the first season, some famous guest stars got paid more than the main cast. But the show's increasing popularity for season 2 brought pay raises for the mainstays, except for Victor San-yoon, who played the Cartwright chef. I wonder why. Yet Victor was a very clever man and turned to writing cookbooks to balance his income. Wardrobe hacks. Michael Landon definitely didn't want his nickname Little Joe to be literal, but it kinda was. His castmates were all over 6 feet tall, while Landon was around 5'9". It bothered him in about every show he had a lead in, from Bonanza to Little House on the Prairie, so he got thrifty. His favorite trick was wearing platform boots or heeled shoes, or simply standing on a step higher. And perhaps some of these insecurities can be traced back to his rather difficult childhood. And we talk more about that in our Michael Landon deep dive if you haven't checked that out yet. But he wasn't the only one with some fashion additions to help his ego. From the start, Lauren Green and Pernell Roberts both wore headpieces as their hair thinned. By season 9, Dan Blocker joined the club with a toupee to hide his bald spot. Landon never went bald, but his full head of luscious locks were colored from a can, as he started graying when he was young. Another wardrobe hack helped the viewers and the showrunners. After so many episodes, these guys basically wore the same outfit, like out of a cartoon. But this was for everyone's benefit.
Hey, look, Fred. It's those TV stars, the Cartwrights. The Cartwrights?
Firstly, viewers could quickly spot one of the Cartwrights' distinctive color palettes to know who's who. Secondly, it helped the editors. The effects team could easily reuse stock footage for many of the action scenes. And finally, the wardrobe department. They could quickly duplicate outfits for the stunt doubles. All or nothing. For its time, Bonanza did a lot of new things and was very progressive, but did it do enough? Hop Sing was basically a walking stereotype, but for its time, the show really did lead the way towards acceptance of all races. But according to Pernell Roberts, the show didn't do enough. He decided to leave Bonanza because of creative differences and even some resentment towards the show. He was so vocal about wanting out of his contract, the team kept multiple actors on standby. And at the end of the day, Roberts didn't think Bonanza was progressive enough. He thought it was demeaning to women and actually celebrated the wealth gap between the rich and the poor, all with lowbrow humor. He deeply wanted his character to marry a Native American woman. It's a pretty admirable effort for Purnell, but when he left, the remaining leads split his paycheck among themselves. Set tensions. Things weren't always sunshine and joy at Ponderosa Ranch. For one thing, Michael Landon was notoriously difficult to work with. The heartthrob was young, but already had very specific opinions about how scenes should look and sound. And Landon was not afraid of flat out arguing with the network about the show's direction. It annoyed the crew, but Landon ended up a semi-official creative consultant for Bonanza. And he'd go on to take an even larger control role for Little House on the Prairie. And we have 2 Little House episodes if you want to go back to a simpler time with us. As for Lorne Greene, he had his own morbid reputation to fight against. Before Bonanza, America's favorite dad was given the joyful title, The Voice of Doom, as he was the leading reporter for World War II and the bombings over Britain.
The largest Canadian convoy of the war has reached Britain. Another German city has been blasted by the RAF Bomber Command.
He had to convince viewers his voice wasn't always something to be afraid of. And it turns out he played this kind personality perfectly. Worth its weight in gold. Bonanza brought in the big bucks. To spend, I mean. It was a very expensive show to shoot, using a budget of $100,000 to $150,000 per episode. That per episode price kept climbing with each new season, reaching $225,000 by season 14. And Bonanza became one of the 8 most expensive shows produced in the 60s and 70s, but it also became the 2nd most popular Western, just behind Gunsmoke. So I guess it balances out. Speaking of balancing a budget, Bonanza managed to stay afloat thanks to the show being so darn tootin' popular. It gained a ton due to merchandising, and raked in the money thanks to themed toys, clothing, and even folk music albums.
Merry Christmas, neighbor.
And please get in the comments and tell us if you have a Bonanza trinket from the past. Jump the shark, or the horse. Before the Fonz made jumping the shark cool and lethal for shows, Bonanza had him beat by over a decade. With over 400 episodes, Bonanza took some strange turns. Look no further than Hoss and the Leprechauns, Season 5, Episode 12 from 1963. Hoss brings home a box of gold from the Leprechauns, and the whole town goes on a hunt for them. Then the plot swerves a bit, and the Leprechauns aren't fantasy at all, but just performers. By the end, Hoss is demanding tolerance for little people.
I think we ought to give them a great big rousing Virginia City welcome.
Fonzie would approve. Earlier that season, Bonanza went full Twilight Zone. The episode was even called Twilight Town and had Joe become the sheriff of a ghost town. Oftentimes, there was some woman who may or may not be psychic or a witch. She turned me into a newt, but don't worry.
Got better.
And usually, our eligible bachelor Cartwrights easily fell into her thrall. Then of course there's the time Bonanza practically invented steampunk, the mix of Industrial Revolution gear with futuristic inventions. A local inventor did what Da Vinci himself couldn't and made Mechanica, wings to turn Hoss into a 300-pound robin, to quote the official title. Baby Hoss. Dan Blocker has been breaking ground since birth, born a whopping 14 pounds, which broke the Bowie County record and still stands strong today. He reached 100 pounds by age 6 and eventually towered over everyone at 6'4". But he wasn't done making history. It's thanks to him America has the Bonanza steakhouses. Blocker had 600 locations. Sadly, he died as the series reached the end. And even in this way, he made history as Bonanza decided no one could fill Block's shoes and became the first show to kill off a main male lead and address it. Musical connections. I'm sure we can all hum the Bonanza theme in our sleep, but can you sing the lyrics?
I didn't know they had words to this. We got a right to make a little fight bonanza.
That's right, Bonanza's theme once had lyrics. In fact, they had Lauren Green, Dan Blocker, and Michael Landon sing for the intro.
We chased Lady Luck till we finally struck Bonanza.
But for reasons unknown, this version never made it to the final cut. Though the tune was very popular with other singers. The biggest fan of Bonanza's music was Johnny Cash, who made his own cover of the famous tune. But he had competition with the king of rock himself, Elvis Presley, who used his fame and pleaded for a picture with the Cartwrights. And although Green's singing didn't make the intro, Lauren still made a musical career for himself. He used that baritone voice of his for spoken word folk albums, and even won awards for the hit track Ringo, The Rural Purge. In the early 70s, networks started booting shows with rural settings one by one, and replaced them with shows set in the city for a younger audience. Bonanza survived the first wave, then got dethroned in '73 by B. Arthur's Maud. Some fans say Bonanza died with Dan Blocker. The episodes addressing his death pulled in more views than most others, and the subsequent season without him ended up with lower ratings. The final blow to a historic show. Truly one of the all-time greats. So let's discuss. What episode of Bonanza do you remember vividly? Did you watch it with your entire family? And who was your favorite character on Bonanza? Get in the comments and share your fondest memories of this wonderful Western. We read every one. And please give this week's episode a thumbs up. It really helps a lot. And subscribe to the channel so you can catch our next profitable venture. A bonanza, if you will. From all of us here at Do You Remember, thanks very much for watching.